When the chosen one walks away, the narcissist's inevitable karma, they thought the pain would silence you, that your heartbreak would be your undoing. But the moment you walked away, that was the moment everything shifted. This isn't just a story about abuse. It's a story about awakening. Because when the chosen one leaves, karma doesn't arrive with thunder. It comes quietly, precisely, and it begins where their control ends. This video reveals what really happens to the narcissist when you stop begging, explaining, trying. It's not your revenge, it's their reckoning. And it begins the moment your soul chooses peace over performance. If you're ready to understand the power of your silence and the weight of your absence, subscribe now to Chosen One's Awakening. This is not just about healing. It's about remembering who you are. The moment they felt invincible was the moment they started to lose. When they discarded you, they believed it was the final blow. They were convinced they had drained you completely, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. In their mind, you would remain frozen in grief, replaying every detail, begging for closure, collapsing under the weight of their absence. But what they failed to understand is that you were never built to stay broken. Narcissists confuse silence with defeat. They see stillness as surrender. They mistake your withdrawal for weakness. But your silence wasn't empty, it was sacred. It was the space where something ancient inside you began to stir. A remembering, a return, a quiet uprising that didn't need validation to be real. The moment they walked away, or forced you to crawl away, was the moment you were reborn. And in that exact moment, without even realizing it, they began to lose. Because what they truly fed on was your reaction, your pain, your confusion. And when you stopped giving them that, when you stopped feeding the illusion, the spell broke. Have you ever felt that shift? The one where their absence stopped hurting and started healing. Their power depended on your confusion. They never needed you to be weak. They needed you to doubt your own strength. Every time you second-guessed yourself, every time you apologized for asking to be seen, they gained ground. Their power didn't come from what they gave you. It came from what they made you question. Was it really abuse, or were you too sensitive? Was that control, or were you overreacting? You started to carry their contradictions like they were your own. One moment they lifted you up, called you divine, made you feel chosen. The next, they made you beg for the same attention they once offered freely. And when you spoke up, they twisted your words, making you feel like the villain in your own story. That confusion, that psychological fog, wasn't accidental. It was engineered. Because as long as you stayed disoriented, they stayed powerful. But then came the shift. A moment, maybe small, maybe quiet, where something in you whispered the truth. And in that moment, their illusion cracked. You began to see the pattern. You began to question the script. You began to return to yourself. That's when their control started to unravel. Not because you fought them, but because you stopped fighting yourself. The chosen one is never just a victim. They thought you were like the others. Easy to manipulate, easy to discard, someone they could drain, destroy, and forget. But what they didn't know, what they never expected, is that you were not placed in their life to be consumed. You were placed there to reflect back their own darkness. You didn't just survive them, you exposed them. Not to others, but to themselves. Your presence brought light into their shadow, and for a moment, they saw it. That's why they had to break you. That's why they worked so hard to confuse you. Because the chosen one doesn't just love deeply, you see deeply. You see past the masks, past the performance, past the charm. And what you saw frightened them. You saw their emptiness, their fear, their hunger for control. You saw the child beneath the monster. And instead of running, you loved, you gave, you stayed. Until the day your soul said enough. That moment wasn't weakness. It was prophecy. Because the chosen one is never just a victim. You were sent to disturb their illusion. And your exit, quiet, grounded, final, is what begins their karma. Have you ever realized that your presence wasn't the problem? It was the mirror. Karma begins when you refuse to be silenced. They expected you to stay quiet, to carry the blame, to keep their secrets locked inside your nervous system. That was the final trap. Not just the pain, but the silence. Because as long as you stayed silent, they stayed powerful. As long as you kept questioning yourself, they could pretend to be the one who was wronged. But the moment you spoke, not with rage, not with revenge, but with truth, their world began to shake. Karma doesn't always look like public downfall. It often begins as an unraveling from within. The mask starts slipping. The lies catch up. The same tactics that once worked now collapse. And they feel it. Not in words, but in consequences. People begin to see through them. Energy stops flowing toward them. They try to recreate what they had with you, but it never lands. Because you were not just another source. You were the spark. You were the one who reflected something real, something they can't replicate. And the more they try to recreate it, the more they realize what they lost. That realization is karma. It's not about punishment. It's about alignment. When the chosen one rises, everything that was built on deception begins to fall. Their world shrinks while yours begins to expand. After you leave, they expect to replace you easily. They may post pictures, create new stories, jump into new connections designed to provoke you. But behind the mask, the truth is starting to settle. Nothing feels the same. The high they used to feel from control, from adoration, from chaos, starts to fade. Their world begins to shrink, not because people disappear, but because the illusion can no longer hold. They find themselves surrounded by noise, but starving for meaning. Meanwhile, your world begins to expand. Not all at once, not in a straight line, but slowly, with each truth you claim, with each boundary you hold, with each breath that no longer asks permission. You start to reconnect with yourself, with peace, with clarity, with a future that no longer has to be earned through suffering. That contrast is the echo of karma. Their reality is contracting because it was built on your confusion. Yours is unfolding because it's rooted in truth. And the more they try to pull you back, the more obvious it becomes that they never had power, only access. And now that access is gone, they try to recreate you, but fail every time. Once you're gone, they scramble, not because they miss you, but because they miss the reflection you gave them, the admiration, the warmth, the grounding. They try to find it in others, in new relationships, new supply, new chaos. But nothing works. No one mirrors back the same light, because no one carries what you carried. They begin to realize that what made them feel powerful wasn't just the attention. It was your depth, your energy, your soul. You gave them something that couldn't be faked or manufactured. You were authentic in a world that feeds on performance. And that authenticity now haunts them. Every replacement feels empty. Every high fades faster. They may post and pretend, but inside, they know the truth. They lost something rare, and they can't get it back. Not because you're unavailable, but because they're unworthy of the access they once had. That's the part they can't escape. The emptiness they tried to run from through you has returned. Only this time, it's louder. And this time, you won't be the one to silence it. Their punishment is seeing you heal. They may never admit it. They may never say it out loud. But they watch. They check. They notice. And what they see disturbs them more than anything else. You're healing. You're glowing. You're not reacting. You're not chasing. You're no longer explaining your worth to someone committed to misunderstanding it. And that, more than anything, is the consequence they never saw coming. Because they didn't expect you to rise. They expected you to seek validation, to spiral, to fall into despair. But you did the opposite. You chose yourself. You started to walk in truth. You began to rebuild, not to prove a point, but to return home to your soul. And that return becomes the loudest silence they've ever heard. It echoes louder than words, louder than revenge, louder than confrontation. Your joy, your peace, your clarity, it becomes a mirror, one they can't escape. And in that reflection, they finally see what they tried to destroy. The healing you embody becomes the punishment they live with. If you've felt this shift, if your silence became your strength, support this channel. Leave a super thanks or become a member today. Every gesture helps this message reach other chosen ones still trapped in the fog. They cannot outrun the void they tried to fill with you. At first, they move fast. They post, they perform, they pretend they've never been better. But it never lasts. Because what they're trying to escape isn't you, it's the void that existed long before you arrived. A void they tried to fill with your energy, your love, your attention. But now that you're gone, that emptiness comes rushing back. Only now it's deeper, sharper, harder to ignore. They may look surrounded, but inside they're collapsing, because the person they thought they could control walked away. And with you, they lost the illusion of power. That void follows them. It shows up in sleepless nights, in short tempers, in a growing restlessness that no new relationship can satisfy. They start remembering how calm they felt in your presence, how grounded, how seen. But they also remember how they poisoned that peace. And no matter how hard they try, they can't recreate it. Because what you offered wasn't a product, it was presence. And presence cannot be imitated, it must be earned. That truth becomes the weight they carry, not just the loss of you, but the realization that what they lost will never return. The universe balances what the narcissist tried to break. What they did in secret will be revealed in silence. Not by your words, but by your alignment. The universe does not need your revenge. It moves according to truth, not noise. And the truth is that when someone tries to destroy what is sacred, the consequences are spiritual. It might not be immediate, it might not be visible, but it is always exact. The narcissist mocked your faith, twisted your kindness, underestimated your purpose, but you were never sent to lose. You were sent to rise. And the rise is what breaks them, not with anger, with clarity, with peace, with the unshakable force of someone who no longer needs to explain why they walked away. Because the healing you've stepped into is louder than their destruction. You are no longer part of their chaos. You are part of something higher. And in that elevation, everything they tried to control slips out of reach. The punishment was never yours to deliver. The universe already had that covered. When you walk in purpose, karma walks behind you. Para. You never needed to destroy them. You just needed to remember who you are. And the moment you did, the game ended. They may keep pretending. They may keep projecting. But the power is no longer theirs. It's yours. The person they tried to break now walks with clarity, with strength, with divine purpose. That's the part they cannot touch. Because karma is not chaos. It is order. And when the chosen one steps into alignment, everything not built on truth begins to collapse. Not because you asked for it, but because you outgrew what was never meant to hold you. And now, they are left to face themselves. Alone. Unmasked. Undeniable. If this message resonated with you, write "I walk in truth" in the comments. If you're ready to take your healing deeper, download the free Circle of Life PDF now. Inside, you'll discover the 12 emotional pillars of your journey and an introduction to the Mind Flow method. Start reconnecting with your power today. You'll find the link in the description. And don't forget to subscribe to Chosen One's Awakening. Your voice has the power to awaken others too. They tried to break you, but all they did was reveal the power you forgot you had.